Hi, welcome to a new episode in the Internet Surfer, hosting the most horror and creepiest stories from Reddit. Please don't forget to comment, like, share, and subscribe. Enjoy.
Reddit, what is your most disturbing, scary, or creepy real story? Serious, Episode 11.
This happened to me a few summers ago, when I was maybe 15 years old. One night it was business as usual. A few of my close girlfriends and I were getting stoned on the porch of my friend's apartment. We'd been smoking and drinking all day. At 15 years old, yes, please save your life lectures for the sake of this story, and I was starting to feel a little unwell. It was getting late, so I decided that I was going to hit the sack and go to sleep. At this point in the summer, I'd been spending every day at her apartment and practically lived there, so I just went and crashed on one of the couches in her room. The night goes on and at one point my friends wake me up to let me know that they are going to sneak out of the window. She lived on the first floor, and her bedroom window didn't have a screen or anything of the sort on it, so we kind of came and went as we pleased, and to make sure to close it behind them. I did make sure to do so. At one point a few minutes later, one of the girls opened it back up from the outside because she had forgotten something, and apparently did not close it behind her. I had already fallen back asleep at this point. Now, something you should probably know about this bedroom before I go any further. The couch that I was sleeping on was about 2 to 3 feet away from the window going directly across the middle of the room. I was sleeping on the couch so that my head was on the side that was directly closest to the window. At one point later throughout the night I heard something rustling around outside the window. I thought nothing of it, assuming that it was just my friends coming back from wherever it was that they had been. It didn't start to worry me until I heard the rustling coming from inside this time, right next to where my head was on the couch. If it had been my friends, it would have been a bit louder as they came through the window. Sleepily, I lifted up my head and muttered my friend's name, looking up at the window. However, instead of seeing my friend at the window, I found myself staring directly into the dark eyes of a stranger. He had a beanie hanging low on his head, covering his eyebrows, and a scarf covered his mouth and nose. He had his arms through the window and had been feeling around on the floor, and at this point his body was about halfway through the open window. His face was only inches from mine. We stared at each other for a moment, as I'm sure I startled him as well. He didn't seem to be expecting someone on the couch, before I started screaming. He quickly drew himself out of the window and hesitated, as if he was about to run away, before reaching for his belt to grab something. I started screaming even louder. I wear glasses and have extremely terrible eyesight, but at this point in time I was not wearing them. To me, it looked as if he was pulling a gun from his pocket. He pointed it at me, and I tried my best to jump off the couch and hide, but I was in a panicked state and my arms and legs seemed to have broken communication with my brain. Instead of hearing a gunshot, however, I realized that it was only a bottle of mace, a realization that hit me once I felt it burning all over my face and in my eyes. Once I finally came to my senses, the man was gone, but I was so startled and freaked out that I could barely breathe. I called my friend bawling, begging them to please come home because I was all by myself. Her mother was out of town, and had no idea what to do. The mace burned my eyes so badly that I thought I was going blind and it hurt to cry, but that was all I really could do until they got back. When they finally returned, we soaked a washcloth in milk and lay it over my face to make the burning stop and called the police. They came and investigated, took pictures of my face, the window, the floor around the window, etc., before finally coming to the conclusion that there had not been a man at the window and that I had been having a delusional dream. My friends all believed me, but the police basically brushed it off as a fake call and left. For weeks after the incident, I couldn't sleep. I had anxiety attacks regularly if I even thought of his face. To this day I have a very difficult time sleeping next to windows, open or closed, regardless of what floor they are on, for fear of seeing some dark-eyed, mace-wielding stranger doing God knows what outside. When I was about 16, I was lying on my bed, reading a book. I was starting to get hungry, so I put down the book, but for some reason I decided to lie down again. As I did so I started to feel lighter, almost as if I was soaring, or starting to float up from the bed. And float I did. I can tell you I did, as I was standing in the doorway watching it all. When I was a little more than a foot off the bed I slowly started to spin. It was happening so slowly that I was tilting quite a bit to my right before I noticed from where I was, floating in midair. From the doorway I saw it quite soon, of course. When I was upside down from where I started, I realized that I was staring at my own face, as I was still lying on the bed, eyes closed, and suddenly I opened my eyes. For a short moment, lasting no more than a fraction of a second, the floating me and the me lying on the bed stare into the eyes of each other while the me in the doorway is watching them/me/us. That is when the connection was broken and the floating me dropped and fell into the me on the bed, and as they touched I could no longer see through the eyes of the me in the doorway. As the connection broke the floating me wanted to scream, but the me on the bed had no such feeling. The me in the doorway was coldly observing. My mom lives in a nice neighborhood, and her neighbors across the street have an autistic 12-year-old son. He was very tall and lanky for his age, and I would see him outside when I went to visit her, playing with his ball or running in the front yard under the supervision of his caregiver. One day about a year ago I came out of the house to find him staring at the bottom of my car, slowly pacing around it. He had lost his ball under there. I told him, no worries, and grabbed it for him. When I put it in his hands, he slowly looked up at me. His head cocked to the side and his mouth hung open slightly, his eyes were vacant. I gave him an awkward smile, but he just stared back silently, his long arms cradling the ball like an infant. I turned and walked back into the house, but not without a quick look over my shoulder. The boy was still staring at me like a statue perched on the curb. Afterward I told my then-girlfriend about what had happened. She said, he was probably wanted to say thank you but was just confused and didn't know what to do. I decided to stay over at my mom's that night. It was autumn, and the Santa Ana winds were howling in full force. I remember hearing a trash can blow down the street at about 2 a.m. as I sat in my old room upstairs on the internet. The next sound I heard was the house alarm system, beep, front door open. The strong wind was known to blow the door open if you didn't make sure it was closed all the way. The hallway outside my room was dark, and I fumbled halfway through to find the light switch. I flicked it on and break a brick house. The autistic boy from across the street was standing at the top of my staircase, staring at me with that same, dead look. His head hung loosely to one side and his mouth was open again. But what really got me was those empty, soul-eating eyes. After a minute of regaining my composure I took him by the hand and walked him back across the street. His fingers were long and spidery, and icy cold. His front door was open, so I showed him inside and scurried back home, making well sure the front door was locked this time. Didn't happen to me but was told this story by a teacher of mine. According to him, he was in a small town in Mexico, driving through to get to his wife who was in the town a few miles over. To get to her town, he was told that he would have to take a road that went through the mountains, something that he assumed would be a piece of cake. The townspeople warned him not to go through mountain roads at night, saying that it is a very dangerous road. He assumed that they were saying this because the road had a lack of a guardrail, and he decided to not listen to them and go ahead with the journey. While he was driving up the mountain, he came across a massive tree trunk that was just sitting in the road. All of a sudden, about 4 or 5 guys pull him out of his car, and take his wallet and start beating the hell out of him. While getting his ass kicked, he made a joke that they fortunately found funny, and apparently stopped beating him, picking him up. He said that after they picked him up, they all went out and got absolutely hammered. He didn't get his money back as he spent it all at the bar with them, but at least he kept his life. A boy was brought in for stabilization and observation. I worked in inpatient psych. He was outgoing, but reading through his history, he'd been abused pretty badly physically and sexually. The staff had a hard time with him, keeping him on task, and they had to keep a good eye on him for acting out in very inappropriate ways. One night, I wasn't there this particular night, he somehow got a hold of a chain and was trying to use it as a weapon to fight his way out. 2 staff members, a nurse and a psych tech, cornered him down one of the halls. The nurse told him, "You may be able to hit one of us with that, but you aren't going to get both of us." Luckily, they were able to disarm him without hurting themselves or him. A couple of nights after that incident, I was there setting up charts and buzzing in guests. I sat in an enclosed reception space with a high counter around it. Patients were not allowed in the space. This boy was there, too, hadn't been discharged yet. And he was on a terror. Just behaving so badly. He'd been put in a small, time-out room by the nurse, but they couldn't lock him in there for safety reasons. I was behind the reception counter doing paperwork, when I hear something behind me. I turn, and there he was, directly behind me. His eyes were bleary, and he was breathing heavily. I was very startled and stood up, easing away from him. I mumbled something stupid like, "I think I should get the nurse." I walked out, and he jumped up and hit the button on the wall to buzz open the door. He leaped onto the counter in an attempt to get out of the door before the lock engaged again. Of course he didn't make it. I got the nurse, and she corralled him back into timeout. The rest of the night was her trying to get him to either stay in there or in his room. I thought about that night more than a few times. What if he had the chain that night? What if he used it on me? That crazy look he had when I turned around and his desperation to get out. I wonder where he is now. My sister and her friends told me about a house they heard was haunted, so I took them to it on Halloween. When we got there, the house was gone and there was just an empty field where it once was. We drove further down the road thinking maybe they got the address wrong, but a bridge had been washed away, forcing us to turn around. On the way back I slowed down near the spot where the house was supposed to be because the headlights were reflected off of something, and it turns out it was the windows of the house. We sat there for a few minutes, wonder how we missed this large 2-story house, when I saw headlights in my mirror. A car drove up to the spot where the bridge was, crossed the bridge and was heading towards us. I sped off because I knew there wasn't a bridge for the car to cross over. Years later we laugh about being freaked out that night, but that was the most silent car ride home I've ever been in. It was summer, it had rained. I decided it was a good time to sweep the deck-like carport thing that was just outside the windows of my garage apartment. I never hung out there, it didn't seem safe enough to me, but it was sturdy enough to stand long enough to sweep off. Went to sleep that night with the windows open. Around midnight I woke up to a buzzing, zooming noise. Then I felt something brush my face. Then something else crawled up my arm. I jumped up and get the light on. There were hundreds of cockroaches, on the wall, streaming in the windows like the screens weren't even there. Did I mention they were flying cockroaches too? Yeah, it was as though heaven and hell were both angry at me, so they conjured together and unleashed the army and air force of the worst creation had to offer. I ran literally screaming out of the apartment and down the street until I was sure I had gotten them all off of me. Went back the next day, no roaches, not one, it was as though they all just went right back out the windows. Never forgot that. Just this past August, my brother and I were getting ready to head on road trip to Canada. Just before leaving we had to go out to grab some last minuet stuff for the trip. On the way to the store, we noticed a little white dog wandering down the road. We didn't think much of it as a lot of people around where I live don't use leashes. After some time, we had finished our shopping and were on the return trip home when we saw him again, this time much further than the spot we saw him originally, and now he was on a much busier street. After quickly coming to the conclusion that he had no owner in sight, we decided to help this lost dog find his way home. So, after pulling over, I got out and whistled for the dog who was now wandering away from us. He looked back at me in playful bliss and began to run away from me. Now, extra worried that he would wander into the street, I didn't chase him. and started walking back towards the car when my brother said, "Oh shit, he's crossing." Before I knew it, the dog had made it to the other side of the street and was running toward my brother, who had run to the other side to cut him off. After dodging my brother, he darted into the street and got ran over by an SUV right between the two of us. His whole lower half was crushed. He let out one loud yelp and urinated, then froze like stone. I picked him up, now of course slightly shaking because of what I saw, and brought him into the car where we got the address of the owner off the tags. The worst part of all was the woman's reaction to seeing her baby dead. I've never seen a reaction like that. And I hope it will be the last time I do. I grew up in a house built in 1809. My parents bought it after the previous owner, who was 89, passed away. It was a beautiful house, but the basement and my bedroom always made me feel uneasy. I don't recall when I started feeling/seeing things, but I was quite young. The closet in my bedroom was always extremely cold, and it almost smelled like a strong perfume. The door would often close and open on its own. I felt someone sitting on the edge of my bed, and felt like someone was watching me as I slept. Then the smells in the house started. My parents often left my brother and I on our own. We were old enough. I started to notice a smell in certain areas of the house. There was a window on the stairs that overlooked our neighborhood. It used to smell like, I would describe, grandma perfume. Often the smell would move around like someone was walking around, and it always followed with an extreme cold area. Things moved without you touching them. Items would go missing and turn up in peculiar places. That was the main floor of the house. The basement was another story. I was horrified of this area. In older homes, the basements are usually dirt floor and cement walls. The stairs to the basement were old and open, so you could see underneath them. Any time I had to go down there, I ran or asked someone to come with me. I don't recall anything really happening, just an uneasy, scared feeling, until we renovated it when I was 14. Going back to my bedroom, I hated sleeping in it, because how cold it always seemed to be, the closet and the smell. My parents decided to renovate the basement so I could have my room down there. Great. I moved my room down there, and everything was okay for a while. I often felt like a man was watching me, or you would see a shadow and turn around quickly to see who was there, and obviously there was nothing. Then the pounding started. Late at night, it almost sounded like someone hitting on the wall from the inside. It would start slow and quiet, then build up to a pounding. Then the watching. I always felt like someone was standing right behind me, like a dark shadow. I never slept that well and was always scared. I went into a really deep depression and hardly left the basement. One night, I was home alone, and I went to get a drink of water. There was a back porch that had a glass door. It was winter and the porch was cold, so the glass had condensation on it. As I walked up the stairs, 2 handprints appeared on the door, and a breath mark appeared and disappeared. The dark man, as I called him, was watching me. I was literally paralyzed with fear and remember staring almost like I couldn't stop myself for at least a few minutes. I ran outside and slept on the front porch that night until my brother got home the next morning. I get shivers thinking about this still. I was about 15 at the time and moved out of the house about 7 months after this to attend college at 16. I did anything I could to move away from the house. Prologue: my mom later divorced my dad, and they sold the house. They later told me, the lady who owned the house before them, had passed away in my room. Also, her husband had an accident in the basement. No one said what exactly, and he was not a kind man to his wife. My parents only started believing that the house was haunted after things I had explained got worse after I moved out. I have heard stories that the new owners have things thrown at them, pictures fall off the walls, and sickly sweet smells and cold follows them. I have yet to step foot in the house since I left. No one in my family talks about it or admits that it happened. This story is probably one of the single most terrifying and exhilarating nights of my life. I was in a car chase. A little background: I'm from an area where there are small towns speckled in between large inner-city populations. The gang violence was so bad when I was in high school that the National Guard had to come support the local police force. The other issue was that if you wanted to do anything fun, chances are you had to rub shoulders with some unsavory types due to movie theaters, bowling alleys, etc. being located in sketchy areas. The Rocky reboot movie had just been released, and me and two of my friends decide to make the drive to the theater. I'm with my best friend John, who was the silent, stoic type. He was a linebacker and captain of the football team. My other friend is Jack. Jack is a funny guy. He loves to have fun at others' expense but is mainly harmless. Jack is now a semi-professional baseball pitcher. This will become relevant. So, we are leaving the movie theater, and we see this car parked near ours that has been trashed. Dented, windows broken, dirt shoveled into the driver's seat. A nearby trash can had been dumped on the roof. Tires slashed. Someone was angry at this guy. A giant 7-11 Big Gulp cup was standing upright on the roof. Think I can hit that cup off? Jack is holding a rock. We are about 90 feet away, so it would have been impressive. We tell Jack no way, let's go. Me and John walk and get into my car. All of a sudden Jack comes running to the car, we need to go. Now. Jack threw the rock like we told him not to. Not sure if he hit the cup, but he picked the most inopportune time to do so. Hi, what the is that? We hear shouting and commotion coming from the theater. Looks like we found the owner of the car. We now realize that we have no proof that we didn't do this to that car, and the neighborhood we were in was very shoot first and ask questions later. So, I started the car and drove off. Jack is laughing his ass off the whole time. That guy can't catch us, his car is trashed. What we didn't account for was that guy was not alone. 5 minutes down the road, I get high beams flashing in my rear-view mirror. I decide to turn down a side road next to a gas station. The car behind me cuts through the gas station and comes out in front of me. He stops and puts it in park. The car behind me also stops and I see doors opening. I am scared myself. My car is about to get shot up. We were going to die right there. My friends are yelling but I can't hear them. Something about how me and John can easily fight 2 people each, and Jack could help. Hate that. They could have guns. They probably have knives. We had a watch and an ice scraper, and some leftover milk duds. I catch a glimmer of silver near the driver's hand and my heart stops. Nothing can really prepare you for that. I don't know what the guy had in his hand, but it certainly wasn't anything that I would like. Pure adrenaline kicks in and I jam my foot on the accelerator. I managed to sneak around the first car and cut back through the gas station. I blew a red light, and it was off to the races. We can see the cars behind us. Jack is nervously calling his friends to see if we can pull up to a party and gain a numbers advantage. John is in the passenger seat, calmly removing his jewelry and stashing his keys, wallet, and cell phone in my glove box. Just pull over, man, we got this. I looked at him like he was nuts. He wrapped his chain around his fist. I'm debating whether I should just drive to a police officer station or try and intentionally get pulled over. We catch a good light, and the 2 cars get stuck at a red behind traffic. I took that opportunity to turn onto a larger road and try and lose them. I did 95 for about 3 minutes and Jack reports from the back that he can't see them. So, I, stupidly, slow down, but there is no way to get off the road. The next exit is a mile away, and Jack starts freaking out. 2 cars are gaining on us fast. It's them. I don't know what caused me to do this, but I just acted normal. Pretended we weren't being chased. The cars gained on us, and right before the exit, the first car passes me, realizes it's us, and slows down. These aren't the droids you are looking for. Trick worked, but only briefly. long enough for me to swerve at the last second and take the exit, effectively ditching the dumbfounded car in front of me. So now there's just the car behind us. I keep driving fast such that the first car will never catch up. Now Jack is on board with pulling over and fighting just one carload of crazy people. But what if they have weapons? Now in my home territory, I'm flying up and down back roads with no lighting. These guys were out of their element. We could only make out 2 or 3 silhouettes, so we figure we could at least show some balls and fight. At this point we decided they didn't have guns because there were many opportunities to shoot at us. So, I pick a field to pull off in. At this point these guys have been following us for 15 minutes, so it's a fair guess that they are now anticipating an ambush. Full on adrenaline rush again, we stop. John hops out first, then Jack, and I take up the rear. We start walking toward the car, which is 100 feet away, and Jack starts waving. Why are you waving, Jack? Then I realize, he's waving at the empty corn field. He's gesturing at the car, directing a bunch of imaginary ambushers toward the crazy people. There is no way that should have worked, but it did. They put their car in reverse and noted out of there. My friend, was that a genius maneuver? I really don't know what would have happened had we not run. At the beginning of the year, I was on a new drug for my type 2 bipolar called lamotrigine. It was having a few adverse effects, and I was ready to talk to my doctor about it. One night, before I had made the appointment, a party was happening in the adjoining duplex and my sister who I live with was away in Sydney for university. I crawl into bed around midnight and pass out like normal after taking my meds. The party was still raging next door. It's Friday. I can't say anything because 1, I'm no party pooper, and 2, I couldn't care less about the noise. I've always been comforted by noises around me. It strangely makes me feel safe and surrounded. A few hours later I wake up to my curtains moving and a man dressed in black standing beside my bed. I screamed, "Get out," and flung my pillow at him. My brain ticked over and I realized he wasn't real and started giggling like a schoolgirl. I promptly passed out again. I wake up in the morning, how weird. Tell my parents and I'm to make the doctor's appointment come Monday. Skip ahead to that night and a huge lightning storm is happening. I love opening my curtains and watching the storm as it rarely rains where I live. My cat is running around like a lunatic. I'm still home alone. I look out across the street and think how weird it would be if someone appeared under the streetlight. I nope out of bed and pull my curtains shut, but not before lightning lights up the sky and someone is standing across the street under the streetlight. I ring Mum. Want to go to their house? No, I'm fine. I know it's not real, but it's frightening me because I could be scared so effective like my uncle. Next night, still alone and go to sleep at 5 a.m. after playing video games. I see my cat walk into our laundry and go to pet her. Turn on the light, no cat. I walk past the spare room and the cat is fast asleep on the spare bed. Needless to say, I stopped taking those drugs. Hallucinations stopped completely. To be scared out of your mind about a new diagnosis and set of symptoms will be something most people can never relate to. About 10 years ago, I would run at a walking path by a river that was very close to a park. I would park my car at the soccer fields and make my way to the path. The lot is nearly always empty, as it is not a very active park. Walking back to my car, I noticed a van that is parked next to mine. When I get to my car, I give a small smile to the guy waiting in the van and begin my way home. Well, this dude follows me. I wasn't worried at first, until I took a few unorthodox turns that I take to get back home. He's still behind me. So, I begin weaving my way through neighborhoods trying to lose some creepy guy in a van. I finally managed to lose him and haven't been back to run at that trail since. Oh, I'm also a dude. When I was a kid we had some work done on the house, extensions to the back, and a converted attic that would become my room. It was sort of open-planned, so there was no door at the top of the stairs, they just led straight into my room. I used to listen to the radio to fall asleep, which was situated at the foot of the stairs, and the sound would travel up. I never had it too loud in case it annoyed my parents, whose room was the same level as the radio. Every now and then I'd change the channel depending on what I wanted to listen to, and on this occasion, I put the classical music station on. That night, I woke up to a really loud, strange sound. It took a few seconds for it to register, but I realized it was coming from downstairs. The sound was what I can only describe as being a very distorted voice, singing. Now I listened to that station hundreds of times and not once did I ever hear a song with lyrics being played. The only voices that came from that station were the host's. It was blaring all over the house. I ran downstairs and turned off the radio as soon as I realized what was happening. Neither of my parents heard what I heard, despite how loud it was, and when I checked the radio the next morning, nothing had been changed. It was the same station, at the same low volume I had put it on. Needless to say, I stopped listening to the radio to fall asleep, and I still panic if I wake up to the sound of music being played. Whatever it was that was coming from the radio that night, I don't ever want to know what it was trying to say. When I was really young, like 2, possibly 3, perhaps 4, but that's pushing it because this happened so long ago I can't remember, I was in the car with my dad and my uncle. We were driving to Anchorage. There's a long straight stretch of highway through a swampy area, if you've been there you know what I'm talking about, and we're going along, abiding by the speed limit and all that, when this motorcyclist comes out of and careens into the front of our car. I think he might have been drunk, mostly because nobody just willingly drives into the wrong lane. The guy goes flying, and his bike ends up in a swampy patch about 20 feet to the left of the highway. My dad had me in one of those baby harness things that lets you carry your child on your chest, and he got out along with my uncle to go check on the poor guy who just got sent flying. They run up to him, he's face down on the pavement, and there's a load of blood all over the ground. My dad crouches down, putting me at about eye level with this guy's ear, and all of a sudden the biker guy rolls over and makes the most pained noise imaginable. His face was essentially gone from the tip of the nose down, leaving most of his face just exposed muscle and bone. He looked straight into my eyes, and made a freaky noise, which, as I look back, could have been his death rattle, and just stopped breathing. That image is the only recollection I have from when I was little, and I think about it quite a bit these days. Biker guy shows up in my dreams sometimes. I get the gist that tonight will be another of those nights. It freaks me out to this day. But around the age of 8 I would walk over to my friend's house all the time to see if he wanted to play, but every time I did so I would walk through this one yard to get there. It was like a shortcut and the owner didn't care if I walked through his yard. One day when walking through the yard when no one was home. Once walked past the man's house I glanced back at a set of windows and there it was. A giant black shadow. Being 8 I ran back home immediately. When I proceeded to tell my mother and my friends they just told me I didn't see anything, and I was lying.
Thanks for watching. Please comment, like, share and subscribe. The Internet Surfer on YouTube for more horror and scary stories.